Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Harlan Deemer. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Courting Rejection, available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And guys, I will say that Harlan was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, AuthorFlex Media Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact our great friends over at AuthorFlex Media. And you can find out more information on them at AuthorFlexMedia.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Harlan, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you for letting me. I don't know how much a person of distinction I am, but I'll make a go at it. I'll try. Give it a try. We should. I think everybody should try to be a person of distinction, and
absolutely,
the way we speak is part of that. So.
Absolutely. And Harlan, that is it, right? That is our message here at People of Distinction. We believe everybody has a voice, and because everybody has a voice, that voice is distinct, and we like to celebrate that here through our network. So you are absolutely no exception to that, and you are truly the embodiment of a person of distinction, and we're very much looking forward to this. Now, I know we have so much information to cover, but before we go into the book, Harlan, let's hold off slightly. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Oh, me. Well, I'm an Air Force brat. I was born in the Mojave Desert in the summer. My dad always called me his desert rat. First memories are Germany, growing up in Germany, the very fantastic, wonderful place at the time, even though it was still at the very end showed all the ravages of the Second World War. I mean, remember that as a kid, and then moved to Virginia, did all of my schooling pretty much in Virginia, graduated from a beautiful school, the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. Recently, not so wonderful seeing Nazi parades with tiki torches going through its grounds. That was a horrible experience. And then I moved to Sweden after UVA. I lived in Sweden for 13 years in Stockholm, another beautiful place. From Stockholm, I came back to the United States, lived in Chicago, another beautiful place on earth, beautiful city. Lived there 30 years, many, many experiences, lots of some wonderful, some horrible. And more recently now, after loss of my partner of 25 years, I relocated to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm sitting at my computer, my desk, looking out at Lake Huron across St. Martin Bay at the island of Mackinac and St. Ignace. It's a beautiful gray day, a silver gray day. A little bit of wind up, no whitecaps yet. And this is my new home where I moved me and my cats in 2019 and making a home here. Unlike a lot of people who think of retiring south to the warm and sunny, I have been doing Sweden, Chicago, and now the Upper Peninsula, much cooler climate. But people say, why? And I say, well, 6 quadrillion gallons of fresh water I can pump out of my front yard. So anyway, that's pretty much it, I guess. That's my history, my biography.
Thank you very much. Very impressive background. We're going to have you back on the network, not to discuss this book or any other books you come up with, but really just to learn more about your background, man, because I'm sure you have stories for days, and we'd love to hear them. The main focus of today's interview, the anchor of today's interview, is Courting Rejection. So without further ado, Harlan, tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, it's the second self-published book. First one was Having Words Together, which was sort of very much in the vein of, who are you writing for? They said, well, what's to discuss? I'm writing for us. But Courting Rejection is a step back in the reality of, as we're trying to engage other people I think generally, with the exception of a few people I have known who are very, very good at engaging other people, most of us meet wariness, outright hostility, some form of rejection. I think the normal human pattern is to be on our guard against overtures from other people. We may talk a lot about, brotherhood and solidarity and community and all of these things, but my basic belief is that we have a tendency to be on our guard against everybody and anyone around us for whatever historical or just basic facts of human existence, whatever are trying to survive in this world, trying to get along, trying to find our way among other people. And the more I thought about that, I said, well, that's a good title. Courting, we are courting rejection. Life is courting rejection. And when I did that, it opened up a whole set of ideas as to, well, for example, what? I give you an example, one of the opening poems. A lot of the poems, the first section is sonnets, although there's one other thing that crept in there that's not a sonnet, actually, but a villanelle that's crept in among them. But I could give you an example from the opening chapter of the book, if you'd like.
Yes,
it's
please.
called For Starters. And it says, for starters, it's an ejection. Is it rejection as well? When the birth waves swell, break the connection with the first place where all dwell? Life's first dejection, crying for a breath, alarmed, expelled from the belly's bell. Does it sting like death? Or do babies bring this choice to sing out with their own voice an election's hell? Past pain, rejoice. Nurse on the breast of heaven, little loaf of bread, needing love's lovin'. That's a sonnet that opens it. So is birth a rejection? Is mom saying, get out, kid? Or is the baby saying, hey, mom, it's time for me to stand on my own too as soon as I can? But from birth, and then it goes to death. Is death a courting rejection? Is it a form of rejection? The body saying, I'm done. Something else. You're out of here. So from birth to death, rejection, 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 and all of the rejections as we try to find ways to love one another, to talk to one another, to interact with one another. It's a series of courting rejections.
This is deep stuff. I love it, Harlan. Thank you very much for sharing. You know, the next concept that I wanted to go into was going to be the title. And thank you, because you've already now gone into it and articulated that for us. But I'm really curious about your book cover, Harlan. You know, it's a black book cover. You see Courting Rejection right there in the middle of the page, and then it almost looks like two hands on each side, one red, one blue. Talk to us a little bit more about that. Talk to us a little bit more about that book cover and why you chose that to be the representation for your book.
Well, the first one I did was having words together, and it's gray with the outline of two hands in yellow, and it means you put your hands on the book. So it's one person putting hand on that book, opening it up, a hands-on book. And I wanted to continue that pattern into the cover for the second book, The Courting Rejection. And it, in discussion with the publisher, it just seemed so correct to make the left hand blue and the right hand red. And because of the problems we are having, our country is courting rejection of one another right now. This is a play, of course, on red and blue, right and left, whatever you associate with either one.
Absolutely.
And so it seemed a natural continuation of the first book. If I were to publish a third book, I'd have to figure out something else to do with the hands. That would be Loving Under the Gun, and I'm going to have to figure out what to do with hands on that one. But that's where the red and the blue and the hands come from, is partly rooted in the first book's cover. So
Fantastic. I love this symbolism. That is incredible. I definitely would not have gone with politics, but I love the fact that you highlighted that and really pointed that out.
Yeah, there is politics, there's religion, there's everything, birth and death, and everything about life in this book. So, I like to think that Courting Rejection covers all the territory poetry can cover, except there is not there's no epic. I didn't include an epic poem, an historical epic on the level of the Iliad and the Odyssey or anything like that.
There you go.
Something like that.
That's going to be the next book. That's going to be the next book.
No epics, please. I might do a novel one day. One of these days. I've got the outlines for a novel, but traffic in the liberal art. So, anyway.
Harlan, talk to our listening audience about your inspiration. What inspired you to become a writer and really become a poet? Were you always interested in poetry? Talk to us about that love of the creative arts.
No, I was not always. I had little books of poetry for kids, A.A. Mills. Now We Are Six and things like that, and fun verse for the children, like that sort of stuff. But in the 10th grade, a number of things happened all at the same time, came together to, one, that's the age when you start becoming a young adult, and I fell in love. French 3, 10 a.m., first day of class, I fell in love and didn't know what to say or do about it. Mm-hmm. And it was also the first time I had Mrs. Comstock, 10th grade English, had her for 12th grade as well. I'd had two very good English teachers in the 8th grade who got me interested in the mechanics of poetry, made me understand the difficulty of writing good poetry. But Mrs. Comstock never intended to be an English teacher. She was a drama major. And she had an ability to present the materials we were reading, studying, that made them come alive. You could hear, instead of dead words on a page reading Shakespeare going flat, she made it live. She had a way of presenting it. And then at the same time, in French class, I ended up reading Paul Verlaine, a wonderful poem, Autumn Song 2, which in French I think it's one of the most perfect poems ever written. And I started understanding what you can do with words. It is amazing the difference you can make in the quality of your life if you learn to choose your words well. And I had to choose my words carefully at that age, living in a rather conservative at the time, conservative Virginia, falling in love and trying to and starting to get religion. That was the year I got confirmed, 10th grade. All of these forces came together, and out of all of that, I had to find a way of working through it, and the only way to do it, really, was words. I do love language. I love speaking. Throw me into a language, it's like throwing a fish into the sea. It's wonderful. I can get excited reading a dictionary. I am an odd man out. I am not your typical American, no. Anyway, so I do find, yes, French, German, Spanish, especially, some other languages not as well, but Swedish. Swedish I speak pretty much like I speak English.
Wow.
In fact, if I get tired, I start mixing Swedish into my English. But I lived there for 13 years, so that's not strange.
There you go.
Anyway,
again, here in the line with B. Harlan Deemer. We're discussing his fantastic book, Courting Rejection, available for purchase through Amazon as well as BarnesandNoble.com. Now, Harlan, next question that I want to get into, and really a curiosity for myself, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon this journey?
When I moved, I had been writing, and a process, it becomes a habit. And it becomes a satisfying habit, a challenging but a satisfying habit, putting pen to paper or using the computer also. But when I moved up to the Upper Peninsula and COVID kicked in, among other things, and social distancing up here sort of comes with the territory. There's not a lot of people up here, and the winters are pretty deep. I found that increasingly I was being awakened at 3 or 4 in the morning, old man stuff, but that ideas were popping into my head. It was almost as though I was being dictated to consider this idea. Here's a line, and I'd try to go back to sleep, and then my head would create a line, and another one to answer it, and then I'd say, okay, repeat them, you'll remember them in the morning. And then I'd say, no, I've got 3 lines, I've got 4 lines, I've got to get up, I've got to write it down. And I would frequently find myself in the autumn and the winter in something almost like a fever, writing and writing and writing, and then some of them got to completion, some halfway, some got completed later. But it was almost like a possession of sorts, and that surprised me that I was writing that much and that it was piling up. One of the problems with Courting Rejection is it's so big. I mean, it's useful as a doorstop, if nothing else. I had expected the editors to help me cut it back, and I got it down to 300 pages, which they somehow inflated to 500. Normally, you don't get a book that big unless you're famous and been dead 50 years to get something that size. Most poetry books are, 60 to 120 pages long, unless it's the collected works of, Wallace Stevens or Walt Whitman or somebody like that. But part of that is because of that period of writing, and it still have it now. And that surprises me that it just keeps pumping out and it keeps creating new ideas. And I think partly I created this structure it was especially the sonnet structure, the 14-line structure, which keeps me limited, but challenges you to think of how to get through that little maze, that little maze of a structure. And then I started falling in love with rhyme, which is not very current. I mean, rhyme is coming back a little bit in poetry, and I do really love much of what is being written today. I have many, many favorite poets out there, current poets, for whom rhyme is just not something they're interested in for the most part. And modern poetry generally does not rhyme all that much. But I created this structure which seems to be a machine of sorts that just keeps challenging me to think anew, come up with ways of saying it. And Pierre Ronsard, who wrote many, 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 many sonnets, called it a thinking machine, a little thinking machine. And I wrote something to him as well, Monsieur R's thinking machines. The old root still greens, Ronsard's small thinking machines shoot out limbs, bear fruit, something good to suit most tastes. Still, these 20 teens, rebooting his lute with new tunes to toot. There's a lot of humor in that. That's almost childlike verse. And there's a delight we have in rhyme. For some reason, in most languages, rhyme is something that creates pleasure, to hear the echoes and to anticipate what's coming next and how are they going to get out of this structure. I liken the poetry I write, which often seems to me like painting from a palette, this color, that color, or chiseling stone or carving wood or building a structure. To me, it's often very plastic, not so flat on the page. And rhyme gives density, structure. It gives relief to the map that you're trying to draw. And I think of it often as a straitjacket that Houdini puts on in order to be able to bend his joints and get out of the straitjacket and come out and free himself. Or getting through a maze. I often think of a poem as doing those two things. And it was especially the case. The past 2-3 years has been doing this. And I ended up with enough to, not just for the one book, you could cut this book into 5 pieces. There are different chapters, of course. You may have noticed that. Let's see, Sonnets Prisoners, that could be a book in itself. The 2 characters, boy cat and dog girl, they are cheeky cheeky characters. Dog Girl, of course, being a play on doggerel, which it isn't. It's not. Is it doggerel or isn't it? What is it? Is this good poetry? Is it bad poetry? Then there's Quiet Times. That's getting up in the morning. I from my religious days, I am still religious, but from my association with very conservative Christians, I developed the habit of having a quiet time in the morning before I start my day. And then that was reinforced recently by reading about Guru Nanak and the Sikhs. One morning he was doing his morning bath before the sun came up, and he had his revelation that there is no Hindu, there is no Muslim, there is only God. And they call that I believe they call it their ambrosial time. Some Sikhs call it their ambrosia time. So there's a chapter of that. Then there's my attempts at what are not haiku. I don't think some Westerners can write good haiku, but we don't have the same sense of haiku that the Japanese do. We don't have their same relationship to nature. I may have written one or two that qualify as haiku. Then there's sauna songs, things that came to me. I'm sitting in the sauna. Chapter 6 is Other Tongues. That's translations and things I wrote in other languages. I actually wrote some things. I wrote one very decent poem in German. I did it as a favor for a friend who wanted me to write something for his mother's 90th birthday. She's from Germany, and she liked it. I liked it. So that was really nice. And then there are two following chapters of cleaning up little things from here and there, what grieves, alas, alack, and zip zim. That's the 8th chapter. Any one of those could have been a book. All 8 of those chapters could have been a book in itself. So you're getting 8 books for one, hey. Okay? Anyway. So.
Fantastic. So much to offer. And guys, listen, we've barely scratched the surface. Okay? There is still so much left to be discovered. And that's why Amazon, Barnes & Noble are the places you have to go. There's no getting around it. Now, as we close out of this, Harlan, I can think of no better way and to close a fantastic interview like this than with another one of your poems. So if you have one readily available, we would love to hear it, please.
Well, this one I think may well stand the test of time. I wrote it in Stockholm, and it was in Having Words Together, and I put it into Courting Rejection as well. And it's sort of an answer to Shelley's Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert, which I always didn't like. I never liked that because to me a bird is a bird. It's called refrain. Mm-hmm. And what I like about it especially is how it uses the breath. How the breath in the first question rises and then falls as you run out of breath. The refrain. Let's see if I can do this right now, if I can do the breath right. Dark bird on a darkening sky, how can you rise against this rain that with the winter evening falls? You're made of flesh as much as I. Have you a greater soul or less? Or do physical facts force me to confess that wings are all you need to fly? Heavily silent within my walls, I watch as the water covers my pane. That's P-A-N-E, window pane, but of course you can make it any other kind of pane you want to talk about. But that first question, I love how what it's describing, your breath goes through. It's like a haiku. The number of syllables is as much as you can normally get out in a breath, and it also is pretty much all you can remember from a first-time reading. It has that quality to it. So, dark bird on a darkening sky, how can you rise against this rain that with the winter evening falls, breath gone? So, I like that poem very, very much. It's one of my favorites easily. And, anyway.
Fantastic. Guys, listen, I'm going to reiterate it once more, even though I know I don't have to. Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com are the places you have to go. Courting Rejection is the title you have to pick up. And B. Harlan Deemer is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. Such a
Thank
wonderful poetry book with so much to offer. So you know what you have to do. Head on over there and pick up your copy today. Harlan, this has been an absolute honor. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today, people of distinction.
Well, the honor's mine. Thank you.